Welcome to this episode of Out of the Best Books, the podcast where we deep dive into classic literature and have conversations about what we've learned and discovered along the way. We love all things books and reading, and we want to share our love of the classics with you. We hope to inspire you to read along with us and join in the conversation. I'm Amity.
And I'm Laura. Let's get started. I was thinking, okay, so today we're going to do like a little Christmas bonus episode, right? We picked a Christmas classic, sort of, right?
At least it's a Christmas book by a well-known classic book author. Yeah. So I think it works.
I'm hoping most people can pick it up because it's a short story. So it's super short.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of by design because we do tend to take several episodes to talk about a longer book. So this time we chose a shorter book, a picture book, actually. Well, it was not originally a picture book. And that's what's so fun. So the book we chose is called The Quiet Little Woman by Louisa May Alcott. And it has kind of a fun history because it was actually written by Louisa May Alcott for some girls who had started up their own little newspaper / magazine, kind of like her, Joe and Beth and Meg and Amy in Little Women. They have their own little family newspaper and they would have installments of Joe's stories. And so this family that knew Louisa May Alcott or knew of her, they had their own little newspaper magazine, these sisters. So in fact, I kind of wanted to read this introduction to the book, and I'll show you for those on video. So here's the whole book. It's really cute, really pretty. So the introduction is written by Stephen W. Hines, but so he gives a little bit of a backstory, and he says, "A gift of love, best wishes for the success of Little Things and its brave young proprietors." And that was a note written by Louisa May Alcott to Carrie, Maggie, Nellie, Emma, and Helen Lukens on the founding of their home-produced magazine. So I get the idea that they were kind of fans of hers because she was already a pretty prolific and well-known author. She's right in the middle of her writing career. And it sounds like they must have reached out to her or something. And she sent them her picture and she sent them this sweet little story for them to add to their little home magazine. And I don't know if they were like trying to, spread it around the neighborhood or the community, but like to add a story from Louisa May Alcott, that's kind of a big deal and like so sweet. And he said, Miss Alcott wrote many encouraging letters to the Lukens girls and even sent them her picture. So it was like, look, I've worked really hard and I kind of know the ropes and I want you guys to be successful too. Her kind attention to these 5 young women is all the more remarkable for the fact that she was in the midst of a very busy writing career that sometimes put great stress on her physically. Her health had been poor since she served as a nurse during the Civil War. At a time when her stories were bringing several $100s apiece, a large sum in those days, she sent along this beautiful tale for little things, for love, not for money, as she put it. So this is something that really, especially in those days, like you said, several $100s, that's a lot of money. And there's no way those girls could have afforded to like pay her the money that her story was worth. So just out of the goodness of her heart, she wrote this story for them and sent it to them. So that's kind of
a super sweet story.
I think it's so sweet. And it's like the perfect introduction for Christmas and the Christmas spirit. And go ahead.
Yeah. These girls are just lucky to know her, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways, I just think that's like so cute that these 4 girls wanted to put out a home magazine and then they reached out to her and she helped them. I just think that's so cute.
Yeah. Very sweet.
Yeah.
Definitely a short story, but long enough that they probably could have made it into a few different installments in their magazine, I bet.
Maybe, yeah. So it's about a girl named Patty who's like in an orphanage or a home for girls, right? And she's like sitting there and watching everybody else get taken. She's just still there, which later in the story, it talks about how there was love there and that was a surprising,
Yeah.
orphanage is not like that, right?
Yeah. I thought that was a really interesting description. She was like, it wasn't like it was a bad place. Everybody was kind to her, but she just was not growing. And she was somebody who had ambition. She was a hard worker. She was very intelligent. She was very, people oriented. And she was just very stagnant there in the orphanage. And so that was kind of her main thing was like, and she was 13 years old at the time of the beginning of the book. And so, and was like, especially as a young teenager, you're like much more aware of your situation than like maybe a small child would be. And it's just got to be like really kind of depressing and
Yeah.
really difficult. And so, and like you say, when she sees other girls being adopted, I think that Louisa May Alcott did try to keep it pretty true to life in the fact that like older kids just didn't get adopted as much. And if they did, it was to be workers. And that was exactly the case here. But as she's there at the orphanage, she creates a friendship with this lady named Jane, and who says, just call me Aunt Jane. And she's just so kind and so sweet. And we get the idea that she's kind of an old maid herself, doesn't really have her own, husband, children, or anything like that. But she does have extended family. But she just spends time there at the orphanage and is just very kind and loving with the girls and creates a wonderful attachment with Patty.
One day, well, the first funny thing that happens is one girl gets taken or chosen and she goes away and Patty's like, that was a bad choice. She's not a nice girl. That's kind of the idea that you get.
That's kind of the idea. And it does come around and we find out, well, that actually was true. And the people who adopted her found out it was true.
And then they bring her back.
They did. Yeah, which is that's kind of rough, but I guess that was sort of the probably fairly common at the time. So
yeah. So she calls her Aunt Jane, right?
Yes.
But she comes in one day and is like, yeah.
Okay, so it's just another one of the girls in the orphanage comes and says, hey, the Murrays brought back Lizzie. They said that she wasn't working at all. And so that's not going to work for these people. And we find out that Mrs. Murray is the sister of Aunt Jane, but she has her husband and children. And so they want to adopt Patty because I believe they'd heard about Patty from Aunt Jane. So Patty knows nothing about the Murrays, but she's like, oh, they're related to Aunt Jane. So this is going to be great. She's super excited and goes to live with their family, but finds out it's not everything that she expected.
Yeah.
So
there's not love. She said there's no, like, they treat me fine. They let me go to church. They let me, they're nice, but they just don't love me. I'm not feeling
she's been adopted, but she's not a part of the family. She really is there as a servant. They adopted her as a servant, which is and she's unpaid labor. It's like we'll feed you. You get a place to sleep, and a place to live, but that's it.
So. And the whole time she's living there, she's also in contact with Aunt Jane. So they're writing letters back and forth. And so she does have that. But.
Yeah. And we find out that like the Murray's attitude towards her is, like you say, it is kind for the most part, but it's also they very much look at her as a servant. And there's a girl who's, I think she's around Patty's age, and she even says to a friend, like, she's nice enough and I'll hand down my clothes to her, but she's nothing more than a servant,
Yeah.
And which would be so hard and demeaning. And there's so many people and children throughout history that was their reality. If they were an orphan, they couldn't often hope for a lot more than that. So, which is really, really sad. But, and I guess I just think as a mother if you have any sort of nurturing tendencies, how could you look at an orphan girl and just be like, oh, and like bring her into your home and just be like, oh yeah, she's just a servant. Like she has no one and you can't be that for her.
Yeah.
there's space for that, you know?
It was a different
So,
time.
very,
I
very
think
different time.
that's just how, yeah.
Yeah. I think people were very, very hard. I mean, I think people are hard now too, but I think
It's different.
in a time when like, yeah, it was just different. So in a
Yeah.
time when like death was everybody's bedfellow, you know, like it really was. It was like, oh, let's have a feast because the mom survived the birth of the baby, you know, like, but there was a huge chance that she wasn't going to. And people had 10 kids just in the hope that like half of them would live, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
just a wild time. I think it really hardened people a lot.
So yeah, so she's writing letters, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of her saving grace. And then it gets to be Christmas time. And at that point, she'd been with the Murrays for almost a year. So,
This reminded me, I mean, she mentioned Cinderella in the story,
mhm.
but like this totally reminded me of Cinderella. Like they all go to Aunt Jane's
Yeah.
and they leave her at home.
Yeah. And the whole time she's expecting, well, not expecting, but like quietly hoping that she'll be able to go. But they never say anything about it, which again, it's like it never crossed their mind. So they're just going to leave her there by herself through Christmas. Okay.
Well, it's because they didn't think of her as, I mean, I kind of think about it like people in this United States that had slaves, like they didn't think of them as people.
Well, exactly.
Like they just didn't,
Yeah.
they must have not thought of her as like, oh, she's just here. We're doing her a favor by feeding her.
Yeah.
So she's not part of the family. She's just here because she can help us and we're giving her a
Right.
place to live. But anyway, so yeah, they go to Aunt Jane's and they don't take her and she's very upset about it.
But the thing is that they all show up at Aunt Jane's, and the very first thing that she says is, "Where's Patty?" They're like, "What do you mean, where is she? Of course she's at home, you know?" And she's like, "In my letter, I specifically said everybody come." And it is, again, it's sort of like the Cinderella story. Every eligible maid in the kingdom should come
Yeah.
to the ball, but not you, Cinderella, you know? So, and the whole time that the Murrays are there at Aunt Jane's, like they're all relaxing and having a good time. And she's like asking about Patty, you know, how is she and how are things? And they kind of begin with some vague answers, but then it comes out they're like, well, she's actually amazing. She works really, really hard. She's honest as daylight, as they say. There's one little boy in the family who's lame, and he says, she takes better care of me than anybody else.
Oh yeah.
And here's what kind of it's like sort of a backhanded thing because Mr. Murray, the father, he's like, she's a great help to Mrs. Murray. And when she turns 18, I wouldn't begrudge giving her a wage, you know? It's like, dude, oh my gosh. So up to this point, she's literally like your slave.
Yeah.
And you don't see any problem with that.
This story also reminded me a little bit of A Little Princess. Like
Yeah.
later, because of, I don't know if you remember in The Little Princess when, she basically loses everything. They
Mhm.
take everything away from her because her father is supposedly dead. And then the neighbor like provides this amazing Christmas for her
Yeah.
and like sneaks in at night and puts soft bedding
Decks
in.
out her
Yeah.
room. Yeah.
So it just kind of reminds me because what's going to happen to her is a little bit similar, but not totally.
Yes.
So while they're at Aunt Jane's, she says she pulls out the letters that Patty's been writing, and she kind of gives them a glimpse into Patty the person.
Yeah. Yeah, because their whole perspective is just, oh, she's a hard worker. She's not super bright. She's kind of docile and dumb and dull. They don't actually say dumb, but they say that she's dull. And Aunt Jane is like, that's not true at all. Like you guys haven't bothered to get to know her. And so, like you say, she pulls out all these letters, this communication that's been happening between Patty and Aunt Jane, and very vividly illustrates the fact that Patty, there's a lot to her. She has hope, she has dreams, she's a deep thinker, she's a great person and deserves their notice and their love. So,
Yeah, and it's funny how they kind of all of a sudden are thinking about her differently, the whole
Yes.
family. And you're
Yeah.
like, kind of, oops,
Yeah.
maybe we should have brought her. Maybe we should be treating her differently.
Yeah.
Kind of realize the error of their ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Suddenly finally see her as a human and a person, where before she was just orphan, whatever that means,
Right.
for some reason in their minds, orphan meant subhuman,
Right.
which is crazy.
If you don't have parents, then you're less.
Yeah.
And we don't know
Because
what
it's all
happened.
your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they head home, they head back, and I'm a little confused about the arrangement. It was like they were going to spend a few days at Aunt Jane's, and then everybody was coming back to the Murray's house for a few days. And so they're kind of like making plans along the way, going, hey, this is what we're going to do better, and this is what we're going to do for Patty. And they're finally like, you know, maybe she was kind of lonesome for the week we were away. Hope she's okay. Hope she's not sick or scared.
Yeah. And what
So,
is she doing while they're away? She's making them Christmas presents
yeah.
and like
Yeah.
getting the house ready for them to come back.
Yeah.
So that was
Completely. Yeah. They pull up to their house and they peek in and they see that she's asleep in front of the fire, and she's got everybody's slippers laid out. She has their little homemade gifts like spilling out of her apron pockets. And anyway, and their nightgowns, that she's got tea going. Everything is ready and warm and cozy for them because that's who she is.
yeah.
And I think that kind of lays on the guilt pretty heavy for them at that point.
And I mean, like the next day or so, things are just like different. They're giving her, aren't they? Don't they give her presents?
Yeah.
Yes, they do. She wakes up the next morning. Oh, and she says when they come in and talk to her, she's like, she said she cried herself to sleep because she was worried that
Mhm.
they wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
Um, that was sweet. So then they go to bed, and when she wakes up in the morning, there's 2 new stockings full of gifts
Yeah.
and some packages that are on the table. This is the part that reminded me of the Little Princess. But
Yes. And really, kind of the best part of all is that she walks into their Christmas breakfast and they have a seat for her at the table. And it's like, guess what? You're a part of the family now. We've kind of seen the error of her ways.
hopefully that
So,
continues, right? It's not just like a
yeah,
Christmas.
I know exactly. But fortunately, Jane is in their lives, and I think that she would keep them in check. So,
Yeah,
but I think they were not bad people. They
right.
just had kind of a skewed perspective, and it just required an adjusting of their perspective, which is, I think, why this is such a good and important story, because there's so many things that we have kind of a wonky perspective on. And sometimes it just takes us stepping into somebody else's shoes and seeing them as they are, and realizing that we're no better or worse than anybody else, and everybody is worthy of love.
Have you
So,
ever had this happen to you where you get a little glimpse into somebody, or like you might have an opinion of them, and
oh, yeah.
then something or a situation happens, and you're like, it just totally changes your view? I don't know.
Oh, 100%. I feel like all the time. And I think maybe that says a lot about me and how I'm like full of judgment at first of people. But I mean, I think probably a lot of people do. They like see somebody initially, have a couple of maybe interactions, and they form this judgment of the whole person. And then you get to know them better and you're like, wow, I
Was wrong
suck at judging people because
all the
I
time.
was completely wrong.
And
Yeah.
like that's what they say. Like if you knew, if you walked in their shoes, you wouldn't think the same thing. There's somebody that I know that I'll tell you later that
Okay.
I had an opinion of, and I was
Mhm.
like, I think a couple episodes ago maybe we talked about how you either there's 2 reasons you don't like people. One is you think they think they're better than you, or you think they're better than them. Those are the 2 reasons that you don't like people. So this person I thought was didn't like me. And
Okay.
so it was like just not as friendly and nice as I thought they should be, right?
Yeah.
Because we have a thing that we think everybody should act like, right? Anyways, and so for years I have had this like opinion of this person and thinking they're a snob, they, whatever. And just in the last like month or 6 weeks or something, I've had a couple of like, they've done a couple of nice things
Mm-hmm.
for me, and we've had a couple of good conversations, and I'm like, my opinion has totally changed.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, and it's like, it feels really good to be like, oh, well, number one, she doesn't think that she's better than me, or at least not enough to not talk to me or be nice. And, you know, it just makes me realize we should figure out how to do the same thing with everybody that we have.
I know. To at least take a step back and plant some doubt in our own judgment, to be
Yeah.
like, this is what I think, but maybe I'm wrong, you know? Because, well, and I've certainly had lots of people judge me unfairly, and that's made a big difference for me too, to be like, there's so many people that have judged me unfairly. I need to really work on that so that I don't do the same thing to other people.
And the funny
So,
thing is the reason I usually judge somebody unfairly is because of an opinion of myself that I have.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you can figure out how to accept yourself and not be constantly concerned with what other people think, then I wouldn't be so judgmental.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, if I don't like somebody, it's because I think they think they're better than me every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Be,
it all stems back to what I think of me.
and that's exactly right. And like, it's really like my insecurities that make me not like somebody, because it's like, the truth is that I think they are better than me.
Yep.
It's not even necessarily that I think they think they're better than me. Maybe there's that someplace, but when it boils down to it, it's like, well, actually, I think that they're better than me.
And it's your way of making you better than them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's sort
like,
of this
like negativity.
defense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back
It's
and
like
forth.
this crazy defense mechanism. So,
So interesting.
yeah. See, that's why this is a great book. It sparks some great conversation.
Right?
At the very end of the book, it's really sweet because I think it might be fun to just end with the last quote of it. It's like nighttime, everybody's gone to bed, and Patty's just standing at the fireplace by herself. But Aunt Jane comes in and is like, "What are you dreaming and smiling about?" She says, "What are you dreaming and smiling about, dearie? The friends that are to come for you someday with a fine fortune in their pockets, like about your great future,
Yeah.
because it's going to be good. And Patty says, "No, ma'am. I feel as if I found my folks. I don't want any finer fortune than the love they've given me today. I'm trying to think how I can deserve it and smiling because it's so beautiful and I'm so happy." And I love that because it's not like she's just going to forego all of her dreams and her drive and everything, but it's like being content and happy with the love that surrounds you, and realizing and understanding and appreciating that, and then kind of using that as your springboard to help you do wonderful things. So anyway, but recognizing the love and the acceptance that she had, and it just changed her world.
It kind of makes me think about being present. Like,
Yeah.
she's not worried about what she doesn't have or what's not, what could be coming. She's like, no, I'm just happy right now. And I
Yes.
think that's a great thing to think about at Christmas time.
Yeah, for sure.
Like yes, Presley, it's 11 o'clock in 3 hours. We're going to a movie.
Oh,
What
oh
time is
yeah.
it? When is it
I'm
going to be 2
excited for you guys.
o'clock? No, I'm going to 2 movies today. This is not
Oh, okay.
normal.
No, okay. Which one are you going to with Presley?
Strange thing, strange world.
Oh,
Something like
I
that.
haven't heard of that.
I don't know. It's like,
Fun.
yeah, I
Oh,
don't
that's
do
fun.
2 movies in a day, but um, like instead of looking at Christmas, like I think as moms often do, of like what could be better? Why aren't my kids getting along? Why aren't they happy with their presents? Why, like you're kind of like, how can I be present and enjoy them instead of
Yeah.
thinking about what's wrong?
Yeah.
Why Christmas isn't going perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of having these like outlandish expectations, just be like, but we're here and we're together and we're just going to be still for a minute and just like inhale the fact that we're present and here. And I can't describe it really well, but
One thing I went
yeah.
to how to, I'll talk about this in this podcast, this lady that I love in our podcast episode that's
Oh,
coming.
cool.
But um, she was doing a workshop about how to have like a stress-free holiday. And one thing to do is to not need anybody else to be different.
Yeah.
So just to be like,
Yeah.
appreciate your family, how they are, and want them to come just like they are.
Yeah.
Because the pain is when you're like, why can't you guys be nicer? Why can't you?
Yeah.
Whatever. So, anyways, just be
Yeah.
appreciative of them being there and them being themselves.
Yeah. That's very profound. And I think it's really difficult for
Yes.
people to do.
Some moms.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
speak from
So,
experience. Um, anyways, okay. So we have, I think, a couple of we just want to talk about some Christmas books, right? That we've
yes.
read in the past
Just
briefly.
some of our favorites. Yeah. All of mine are children's books, as you would probably expect. The one I wanted to start with that I had almost forgotten about. I keep all my Christmas books with our Christmas decorations because then I pull them out and we read them throughout December. And so when we pull them out, I was like, how did I forget about this? It would have been one that would be fun to read and talk about. It's so sweet. It's called A Grandma for Christmas. It's by Alta Halverson Seymour. And it's not one that you can just find on Amazon. You would have to go to thegoodandthebeautiful.com and order it from their library because they get a lot of books that are like out of print and they republish them. And it's just, I love it so much. It was first published in 1946, if that gives you any idea. The first part of this particular book, they actually talk about Christmas traditions in Norway because this book takes place in Norway. And it really gives you an amazing idea of what Christmas time is like in Norway. And this is like the very, very, very far north. Okay, so it's just dark all the time. They don't have any sunlight and everybody skis. So with those things in mind, that's kind of the backdrop of this story. So it's this little family, well, it's quite a large family, and they live on a farm and they are preparing for like this 2 weeks of Christmas celebration, basically, and this is what everybody does. They just go to each other's houses. They just show up anytime and they have just tons of food and they just mingle and they eat food and visit. And then they go home or they ski to the next person's house. It's just like, I love that idea so much. So it's about this little boy. Named they just call him Little Gunnuf. Gunnuf. I don't know how to say his name. So he's trying to make a special gift for his mother. It's like a little stool, and he wants to paint it just beautifully. And in Norway, like kind of think about the decorations on Anna and Elsa, like their dresses and stuff. Like think about that sort of style, or the Scandinavian festival, all the very decorative. And you guys, that's sort of your heritage, right? And so the very decorative paints and embroidery and things. So he's kind of has that vision for this beautiful stool he wants to make for his mother. But everyone is so busy getting ready for this 2 weeks of celebration. They just don't have time to help him. His family is really loving and wonderful. They just don't have time for this. And so he kind of stumbles on this lady who they know. If I remember right, she's sort of like this grumpier lady who's a widow, and she lives a ways away from the Roland family. But he starts visiting her, and she's able to help him with his stool. And he gets her firewood because she's not able to go out. Like, she's so old and she doesn't have anybody to help her. And she can't go out on skis anymore. And so she can't get firewood. So she's just freezing. And so he and his brothers, they take her firewood, and they invite her to come and spend Christmas at their house. And anyway, it's just such a sweet, beautiful story. And like I said, I think one of the delightful things about it was just getting this insight into how they celebrate Christmas in Norway. So,
I mean, if you want to celebrate Christmas, I think Norway is the place to go.
I know.
Hold on a second. I'm going to see if I can. Have you heard of this one, A Boy Called Christmas by Matt Haig?
I've heard of it. I have never read it.
Matt Haig, heard about this. I ordered the book, and then I found out it was a Netflix movie. So if you don't want to watch, if you don't want to, it came out last year, but if you don't want to read the book, then you can watch the Netflix movie.
Okay.
And the Netflix movie was pretty good. So it says you're about to read the true story of Father Christmas. So it's a story about how nothing is impossible. And if you are one of those people who believe that some things are impossible, you should put this book down and not read it. Basically, A Boy Called Christmas, it's about a little boy, and he lives alone with his father. And his father goes on like an adventure to find this. It's been a while since I read it, but an adventure with a bunch of other men, and leaves him home with his like wicked aunt. Like, horrible. This lady is horrible. She comes, and while his dad's there, she acts kind of nice, and then he leaves, and she basically like puts him outside in the snow. You know, like, I think they live up by the North Pole. So the book is full of impossible things. So this little boy basically is like, I'm not staying here with this woman. I'm going to go find my dad. And so he goes on an adventure. It says, A Boy Called Christmas is a tale of adventure, snow, kidnapping, elves, more snow, and an 11-year-old boy called Nicholas who isn't afraid to believe in magic. That's very cute.
That's fun. That would be a super fun one.
And it's a chapter
to read to
too.
kids.
So like, actually, I should give this to my niece Reagan. I think I'm going to, or loan it to her, or buy it for her, or something.
Cool.
I like to surprise my nieces, actually, and my nephew. I have a 2-year-old nephew that loves books too, and I'll just sometimes like send them books from Amazon.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh,
Like,
I love that.
Did that at Halloween. I was like, here, read these. And they
That's really cool.
They love books. So.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. The next one that I wanted to share is, I feel like this has kind of become a Christmas classic. Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree by Robert Barry. And it's the story of Mr. Willoughby. It's like super short. It's a picture book. So and I think I've read it like 5 times to my kids already. And it's only December, whatever. Yeah. So, but it starts out, this one has really cute illustrations. It starts out, it's all in verse. Mr. Willoughby has this huge Christmas tree, but it's just a little bit too tall, so it kind of bends at the top on his ceiling. So he cuts off the top. The top of that goes to his maid. That's just a little bit too tall, so that she cuts off the top. Anyway, it just goes down until it's like these little mice that have the very tippy top of the tree, and so the tree gets passed around, and everybody gets to share the love. So it's really cute. It's really sweet.
I think I've read it. I saw it this year.
I'm sure you have.
I've read it.
Yeah.
Okay. So my next one is now this one's a little, not really, I mean, I read it to Charlie when he was 5 or 6. And so he liked it, but he was a little mature in the like reading. I mean, I don't know. He's always had like an attention span for stories. And so I don't think I could read it to my now 5-year-old.
Mm.
She'd be like, no way. This is kind of an adult, story. But it's called The Autobiography of Santa Claus by Jeff Guinn. Guinn? I don't know. So this one, which is also by him, and this one is called How Mrs. Claus Saved Christmas. And I haven't read this one, but I do
A
own it.
pretty book.
I think I picked it up from like an a secondhand store.
Okay.
And I used to have Autobiography of Santa Claus. I just don't know. I think every once in a while I'll go through and get rid of all my books. Yeah, like I said, this isn't really like a kid's story. I don't know.
Okay.
It's just kind of more for adults. But it all started when Jeff Guinn was assigned to write a piece full of little known facts about Christmas for his paper, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. A few months later, he received a call from a gentleman who told him that he showed the story to an important friend who didn't think much of it. And who might that be? Asked Jeff. The next thing he knew, he was whisked off to the North Pole to meet this very important friend. And the rest is, well, as they say, history. It's an enchanting holiday treasure. The Autobiography of Santa Claus combines solid historical fact with legend to deliver the definitive story of Santa Claus. And who better to lead us through 17 centuries of Christmas magic than good old Saint Nick himself?
That's cool.
Okay, you got another one?
That's really fun. Yeah. Okay, then the next one I'm going to do is Christmas Oranges.
Ooh.
So this one is a very well-known story. So this one, like, you can't really say who the author is necessarily. This one is retold by Linda Bethers, and then it's illustrated by Ben Sowards. So there's lots of different renditions of the story, but this one in particular just talks about little Rose, who is an orphan. I don't know what it is about orphans at Christmas, but it kind of tears our hearts out. And she lives in this orphanage where it's, a bunch of little kids, and the proprietor of the orphanage, he's just really cold and cruel. He wants nothing to do with Christmas. But there's a gentleman in the town who brings the kids a bunch of oranges for Christmas. And to sort of like keep up appearances, the proprietor has a big tree put in the front entry of the orphanage, but he doesn't want it decorated. He doesn't want any fuss about it. When this older gentleman brings the oranges, he's like, okay, we're going to like decorate. We're just going to put the oranges on the tree. Like that's going to be our decoration, which is kind of pathetic. But anyway, Rose has never tasted an orange before. And she is so excited because the kids are like, yeah, this guy brings oranges every year and we get to eat them on Christmas morning. And she's so excited and she can't sleep. And so she tiptoes out of her room that night and she goes and looks at the tree and sees the oranges. And then she goes back to bed. But it just so happens that the guy who runs the orphanage, he sees her. The next morning, he is like, you have to stay in your room you don't get to eat anything today. You just have to do chores and you go to bed. And so you miss out on your Christmas orange. And I'm not going to tell about the rest of it because people either know it or they need to read the story because it is so sweet and it gives you the whole, like, this is really what Christmas is all about. And I cry every time I read it. But anyway, I love it. It's great.
Do you know what a cozy mystery is? Have you heard that term before?
Mm-mm.
I'm not.
No, actually, you know what? I think it just barely came across that term. Okay.
So it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's a cozy mystery. There's usually a murder, but it's like cozy.
Okay. You know what? I came across it because I was trying to find mystery books for my boys for Christmas. So I'm like looking up all these things. And then I saw these lists of cozy mysteries.
Yes.
Okay. And I was like, okay.
They're not really needy. So like the Thursday Murder Club is an idea of a cozy mystery.
Okay.
Anyway, so I keep trying them thinking it's cozy. I should like it.
I should curl up next to my fireplace and read it.
So like maybe if that's what I was doing when I was reading it, I would like it. But like,
okay,
driving or moving or working, I don't know. So I heard about these books and I thought, let me try. And actually, this is I actually stuck with him, finished it. So that's saying something. But anyways, this is called The 12 Sleighs of Christmas. But it's
Oh,
not like
wow.
Sleighs. It's
Yeah.
Lys.
Like slay, like kill someone. Oh, wow. Okay.
But it's like so funny because it's like cozy mysteries are funny because yes, there's a murder, but it's like not graphic.
Mhm.
It's kind of like this cozy little town and everybody's trying to figure out who murdered this person, but it's like it wasn't really a murder. It's very weird. But I guess there's at least three. It's by Jacklynn Frost, and they're called the Christmas Tree Farm Mystery. And a lot of people, if you like cozy mysteries, this is like watching a Hallmark movie with murder.
Okay. Okay.
And I mean, the other suggestion I would say is if you are dieting, don't read it.
Oh, so talk all about food?
Well, like every time you turn around, they're having like gingerbread hot cocoa or like cupcakes or cookies or pie or like,
That's so funny.
I'm diabetic. I'm not supposed to be eating this stuff. So it's not fun. But anyways, so it's the story about Holly White, who her fiance, they're supposed to get married on Christmas Eve and he cancels their wedding. And so she goes
Mm.
back home to her parents' Christmas tree farm and there's a murder. And her parents do this like, you know how in Hallmark movies they'll do little towns will have like a Christmas scavenger hunt or
Yeah, like these crazy things that you're like, that's so fun. Do people actually do that?
yeah, they don't. But like the whole town is involved in these like
Yeah.
games, right? And so that's kind of what they have. Well, in the middle of it, there's a murder. And like she's worried because their parents like, rely on this money
Mm.
of these things that they put on at Christmas time. And like the sheriff is like, you can't do it because we're investigating a murder.
Mm.
Anyways, it's just kind of cute. But so she's trying to figure out who the killer was. And then a couple of times they try to hurt her. Anyways, it was cute. But like I said, if you know you like cozy mysteries, then this is a cute one to read at Christmas time.
I might have to look up some cozy mysteries just for fun at the library or
You
something.
might quit them like halfway through. I don't know. I just can't get into them. It's like not enough is happening.
Okay.
So in this one, I'm just like, okay, just appreciate how they're described. It's okay. So another funny story. Hallmark movies.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, especially my dad, also does not understand why we watch Hallmark movies.
Okay.
I don't actually either, but except that we like watching the Christmas decorations and the clothing.
I know. I know.
That's what we're watching.
Yeah.
Not the
Because
plot.
like when it comes down to it, like the story like never has anything to really do with Christmas. It just happens at Christmas time. But they have to go home for Christmas. I guess that's true. But it's just like all the cute winter clothes and it's all snowy and the idyllic scenes and the pretty decoration. Like that's
That's how this book was with a little murder. But yeah, I'm like, I was telling David the other day that I have this problem with a fear of missing out. And so like I have to watch all the Christmas movies because I have this fear of missing out on one, but I don't actually enjoy any of them. And he was like, see, I told you. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh, that's really funny.
Why am I watching them? So I decided I'm gonna watch like a couple and that's it.
Sure.
And just really like take the time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, instead of doing a million things while I'm watching it or whatever, I'm gonna be or trying to get through it because I can check it off my list. How stupid is that? I'm just gonna like make hot cocoa, like do a cozy watch.
Do a cozy movie night. I love it.
I don't
think
need to
that's a
watch
great
them
idea.
24/7. I just need to watch a
No.
couple.
Yeah, just watch a couple. Maybe you make a date with yourself and the Hallmark Channel.
So, what are you reading?
So, since we're talking about Christmas, right now I am reading A Christmas Carol to my family. And this is something, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, obviously. This is something that we've done several years. Last year was a really rough year and we didn't do it. So it's really fun. And as I read through, I'm like, I don't know like how much of all this everybody's picking up on, but we'll try to stop and talk about it. And Matt's very determined that we've never finished it before. We've totally finished it several times, but I definitely always start reading it to everybody. Sometimes we get in the middle of the Christmas season, we're like, ah. So I started it on, I think, Sunday, so that we'd be like actually in November when we're reading it and have a greater chance. It's really not that big of a book. So we're into it significantly. Anyway, what's that?
Do you just read on Sundays?
No, we read every night.
Every night? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's because we want to get through the whole book so that Matthew cannot say we've never finished it, because we definitely have. And this year he will know that. So
that's really cute. Now, what I'm reading right now is very, very funny. It's called Mr. Dickens and His Carol.
Oh my gosh, that's cool. Okay.
By Samantha Silva. So it's like he just had this big flop of a book called Martin Chuzzlewit. And so his publishers tell him, you have to write a Christmas book in a month, or they're going to make him pay his debts and he could lose everything. And so he has no choice but to write this Christmas book, and he doesn't want to. I haven't gotten terribly far into it. I'm like maybe 10 or 15%, but I found a list of 25 like Christmas books to read, and this was on it. And I was like, well, I could read that. So cool. It looked interesting. And today, I told David, because today, the day we're recording, our first episode of Far from the Madding Crowd came out this morning. And I told him, make sure you're not doing something when you're listening, because a lot of times he'll like half listen to us. Because I'm like, you need to be able to follow the story. And I want to know what you think about listening to it as somebody who hasn't read it and isn't going to read it. Like, is it interesting to you to hear the story of Far from the Madding Crowd just as we're talking about it? Or is it something that you're like, oh, I wish I would have read that? I don't know. So he's going to. Yeah,
that'd be really good feedback. Okay. I'll have Ken do the same thing.
A lot of my friends, like my mother-in-law and my family and stuff, are like, well, I don't want to listen to it until I read it. And I'm like, well, then you're going to get really far behind. So I want to know, like, I'll just tell people, oh, just listen to it. You don't have to read it.
Yeah, you don't even have to read it, honestly. Like the way that we run down the chapters, like, you get the whole thing.
You'll feel like you read it.
Yeah.
Okay. We're so happy you joined us for this episode. We hope you will join us next week as we discuss chapters 31 through 40 of Far from the Madding Crowd. If you have suggestions for books we should read and discuss, please email us at thebestbookspodcast@gmail.com. We would love it if you would leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. We want to inspire and encourage as many people as we can to read out of the best books.
As Thoreau says, read the best books first, or you may not have a chance to read them at all. Merry Christmas, and see you next week.